Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP Jabaz, right here on the two-man power trip of wrestling's podcasting empire, the Business of the Business, with my co-host, Dr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. Been thinking about a unique topic. Maybe it's related to your annual trip to Disney World. Maybe I was at MSG's Descendants Zombie Show and it made me think. But you know the phrase where they always say, like, media eats media and, like, constantly gets bigger?
Yes.
So, TKO, especially on the WWE and UFC sides, have just been killing it recently, right? With, like, deal after deal after deal. But when you think about, like, the big media landscape, how big is TKO really? Right? Like, a company like Disney is 6 to 7 times larger in terms of market cap. And I just came across a Variety article yesterday, which was more focused on movies, but it it spoke to things overall that Disney is really trying to get to that Gen Z generation. We've heard this for years, not necessarily called Gen Z, but that younger teen or mid-teen, 18 and older, and so on, broad generations. Now it's defined in this article in terms of 13 to 28. And when you think about those two groups, um, WWE covers a lot, but probably somewhat on the younger side, and UFC covers a little bit on the older side. Um, so just to refer to that Variety articles, leadership at Walt Disney Studios has been pressing Hollywood creatives in recent months, multiple sources tell Variety, for movies that will bring young men back to the brand in a meaningful way. Young men is defined here by sources as ages 13 to 28, aka Gen Z. First, duh. Every film studio is looking for better ways to convert young audiences into habitual moviegoers. Numerous studios show that Gen Z men in particular are a lonely, gaming obsessed group who are hampered in their formative years by COVID-19 lockdowns. Not the easiest segment to grasp. But what's surprising producers, writers, and other partners in the larger industry is that Disney has been calling for original concepts to lure the demo back to the movies. The article later said, was talking about their acquisition of gaming platforms and so on to try to lure the generation. And as we know, some of their strongest acquisitions over the last, what is it, 20 to 25 years now, were the Star Wars franchise and Marvel. Now, in terms of TKO properties, WWE pro wrestling can be adopted in a number of ways. It could be, well, cutting edge is a challenge sometimes, but it can be geared towards sort of like mature audiences, like a little bit naughty. It can be family friendly and so on. Whereas UFC, obviously, inherently in what it is, it's bloody, it's raw, but it's been accepted a lot more, by the public. And obviously, on the ESPN side, depending on deals, they haven't shied away from it. So, in terms of public acceptance, I think like both have come so far. And in terms of the UFC, to continue plugging my book concept, just following it from uh, its early days through the lens of like Trump's involvement and so on. But even till today, like each TV deal was like such a leap into mainstream acceptance. What do you think about Disney maybe kicking the tires of TKO? Do you think that would be a smart acquisition, John?
I feel like with what they're up to lately, it's definitely a possibility and definitely something they're either talking about or maybe even looking into at this point, just because they're definitely looking to get the male viewership back. The young men too, they're looking to get back. They kind of screwed up Marvel a little bit. They kind of screwed up Star Wars just a little bit, just as far as some viewership. Although if you really look at it, like the parks and stuff, Star Wars is extremely popular, at the parks. Obviously, they have their own land. They make a ton of money. They make a ton of money off merch. But right now, there's a little bit of a whirlwind with Marvel. Obviously, you kind of capped it off there with the whole Thanos storyline. So it's like, where do you go from here? And they kind of fumbled it a bit, and maybe a little bit with Disney Plus. But They just bought the NFL Network. They bought Red Zone. They just bought MLB TV. They're going to do more baseball games. So they're definitely 100% going after more of the male demographic, which they felt and they admitted that they lost a lot. So I feel like that would be right up their alley. They are promoting that they just bought the WBPLEs. That's a part of this new DTC service, the direct to consumer. So I feel like that goes right in line. And they even sprinkled in that they still have UFC as far as their library is concerned on some of their platforms. So they're really, I mean, baseball, football, MMA, and wrestling. That's male dominated, obviously demographic, and that's definitely right up their alley and right what they're looking for. And always, even though they're a $37 billion company or possible entity, meaning TKO, of course, a $200 billion company could just gobble them up like a cheeseburger quite easily.
So I'm not as familiar with the parks, although I was at Disneyland once, I think, and Disney World when I was younger. My grandfather was like very like, all right, everyone, you got to get up at 5 a.m. We got, we got to get online. We got to maximize the time till it closes or whatever. So it wasn't, as fun as it could have been when I went with my parents later. But a few years ago, went with my family too, which was special. But I think we just stayed in the Magic Kingdom. So I know that there's like the Star Wars experiences, and I assume Marvel ones too. But like, is there a way to take like maybe what WWE and UFC do when they have these like experiential like conventions, right? Like you could hit pads for the UFC, and like it's like you're hitting the fighter, or different like Hall of Fame exhibits. Like, is there a way to like distill that it appeals to like a broad base of people that are passing through? Like they'd be curious about it for like a half day or a day at the park, or is it still like very niche?
They could definitely. I don't know how they would do it, but there is definitely a way. And if anybody could think of it, it's them. I mean, they do those immersive experiences. They'll do a ride. They'll do a walkthrough. They'll have, people walking through the park dressed as characters, or even have the characters themselves doing a signing or picture taking. So there is definitely a way to maximize it. And I feel like those guys, especially with their merchandising and everything else they do, I mean, everything is merch to them. So, I mean, I feel like they would kill it in that aspect.
Maybe like they have like a ride where it has screens, and at the beginning it's Dana White screaming, "Do you want to be a fighter?" And then you have to work your way
Yes.
up, and then like before you get off the ride, you like meet a lawyer, and then you're part of the lawsuit to recover money or whatever it may be. So, just saying that tongue in cheek, but
Yep.
yeah, I mean there are a lot of possibilities. But also like Mark Shapiro, who obviously I know from the conference calls. Now I hadn't followed his career journey, and I didn't realize like how tied in he was. So I just give a little bit of context for that. Mark Shapiro, a prominent media executive, has a significant connection to Disney through his tenure at ESPN, as ongoing relationship with Disney-related entities. Here are the key points. ESPN leadership, 93 to 2005. Whoa. Shapiro began his career at ESPN as a production assistant. He rose through the ranks to become executive vice president of programming and production in 2002. During his time at ESPN, he spearheaded development of Pardon the Interruption, Around the Horn, secured rights for Monday Night Football, Wimbledon, the NBA, contributed to Sports Century. He's been rumored as a potential Disney CEO candidate. In 2025, former ESPN CEO Steve Bornstein, who mentored Shapiro, publicly endorsed him as a potential successor to Iger. Bornstein highlighted Shapiro's prior Disney experience through ESPN and his expertise in sports media and amusement park management from his time at Six Flags as qualifications that make him a strong candidate to lead Disney, given the company's key pillars in ESPN and theme parks. UFC and Disney ESPN partnership. As president of TKO, Shapiro has been instrumental in maintaining negotiating media rights. Okay, so I think that part has been covered. So, John, before we move on from the Disneyfication of TKO, any other thoughts on that? Otherwise, we'll talk about other media.
Mark Shapiro, just I think kind of a funny, different thing when I think about it, because remember when he was talking about how they bought WWE, meaning TKO bought WWE when they had UFC, and they're like, oh, it's going to be UFC 2.0, and then he got kind of humbled about that. He got ripped apart. Even Nick Khan ripped him. I mean, and then he kind of had to walk that back. And I just think it's funny now in 2024, looking back a year. Obviously, we're in 2025 now, but looking back and see who's profitable, who's not. UFC wasn't profitable last year. WWE killed it and was super profitable. So it's almost like, oh, I guess UFC 2.0 is more profitable than UFC 1.0. And obviously, he's never mentioned that again, and he got humbled and you know what I mean. He kind of walked that back quite a bit. But that's just a funny thing that I was like, wow, Shapiro kind of knows business, but he doesn't really know kind of what he's into. You know what I mean? He's into UFC, he's into WWE. WWE is more of a moneymaker, and he's not kind of realizing that. And obviously now he is. So it's just interesting to see his background and where he comes from and kind of what he knows and what he doesn't know.
Yeah, and some people have speculated on like some friction between Mark Shapiro and Nick Khan, sort of like they both are sort of forward facing, obviously under Ari Emanuel, like in representing the organization. So maybe there'll be a power struggle at some point. I don't know if Mark Shapiro answers his phone in the middle of the night and says, "How can I help you?" like Nick Khan wants like Nick Khan wants everyone to do it. I'm sure he does work, 24/6 or whatever it is. But the next thing, and John, I'm going to need your help a little bit with this here because Hollywood Reporter reported that the feeling that so obviously WWE, as has been covered by many outlets and so on, got out of its deal with Peacock to an extent in terms of the premium live events to go to ESPN. They felt it had been satisfied by having like multiple nights of certain PLE, so maybe the total added up or whatever it may be. But then they had said WWE and Peacock have worked out a deal to include new main roster WWE programming to stream on the NBC Universal digital platform. So is that the Saturday night's main event deal that got worked out, or can we expect another WWE program?
I think they're referring to Saturday night's main event because that's the new deal for Peacock.
Okay, because I was wondering, like, when companies sign deals for like Raw and SmackDown, right? Like, I don't know if WWE could just create like a wrestling show, out of nowhere and start using the same talent, right? Like, so that caught me by surprise. So that's helpful to know. But like, what's amazing is that basically anyone of certain scale that's willing to pay a media company, if they're looking for wrestling or especially WWE, they can get one in a variety of different ways, right? Look how many places they're covering. So just to me, it just shows how much control of the industry that they have as we look towards a focus on challenger brands. Obviously, TNA only gets one if with WWE's blessing, looking at who it's rumored that they're talking to, right? Like if TNA was thinking, okay, WWE will be off Peacock, now they're not, right? There's still something going on there. And look at what chance does like an MLW have for breaking through on a bigger level, or an NWA, which I mean, obviously they have the Roku now, but or ROH. And people have said like, do you wonder if Tony Khan has thought about like giving more credence to a CW deal back in the day for ROH from a financial perspective? Maybe it wasn't necessary to keep things going, obviously, but he opened the door for WWE, who walked through, and it just made the environment, harder for him now. One of the things people aren't talking about, though, which is interesting with CW potentially picking up TNA for like competition on Wednesday nights. I forgot if it's 7.5% or 15%. Warner Brothers Discovery just still owns a part of the CW. So it used to be almost fully in their house, and then they had sold it to Nexstar, I believe. But like, would you want to screw over a partner that way? I mean, sometimes things cross over in that way, but it just seems like very bleak for challenger brands to get media distribution in the U.S. John, what do you think?
I feel like that is rough for whatever reason. If you're kind of like a not WWE or AEW, it is tough, really. I mean, TNA obviously has had a trouble for a long time in securing these deals and these rights.
Overseas, though, is something interesting. Obviously, we spent a lot of time last week. The lead story, if I'm remembering the week correctly, of a new India-based pro wrestling company coming with wide distribution. But Eurosport India has, under that name and previous names as well, has sort of been the tentpole place for basically non-major league North American or Japanese wrestling as well in India, right? So back in the day, they had Ring of Honor, under Sinclair. They had New Japan. I'm not sure if it still airs there, but they at least had it there until very recently. They've had AEW, who's still there because it's going to air Forbidden Door on there. But WWE is now coming with their A&E programming. So Eurosport India acquires rights to WWE LFG and WWE's Greatest Moments. Eurosport India will follow LFG and Greatest Moments, featuring insights from legends like Austin, Hogan, and Kevin Owens. Eurosport and Eurosport India, part of WBD, so that's interesting, right? Have secured the exclusive telecast rights for the first season of WWE, LFG, an American pro wrestling reality competition that will premiere in India on August 15th. So we know, like, once it goes international, the same like rivalries necessarily sort of like get put to the table in terms of making more money. I mean, that goes all the way back to the lore of how Nitro got started, right? Like Eric Bischoff had to speak to Ted Turner because there was a Rupert Murdoch owned satellite company in Asia that was going to pay WCW a lot of money, but Turner and Rupert Murdoch didn't get along and so on. So interesting to see, though. Also, TNA is on there. So interesting to see if that affects anything. I'd imagine that it wouldn't unless Eurosport is sort of like, we're full and maybe removes a TNA, for example. Obviously, they want to keep AEW, but it's also a step removed. So everyone has their own book, so it has to make sense for them.
Very true. It's just one of those things where, like, what is going on with TNA? You know what I mean? Like, they seem to be hot, but can they get that TV deal? What's kind of the latest with everything going on with TNA?
Yeah, with the TNA deal, like, I feel like it's the same. It's the same script being repeated. I think I don't know if we covered it so much last time, but like that fantastical thing where it's it's a hedge against the bed and WWE and first rights to buy and so on. And I'm not discounting that, but there's just so many stories about it. But I just feel like it was overemphasized to get in the media with Slammiversary, which I think basically Carlos Silva kind of like said. So, if I was interpreting it correctly, not to go too far afield, but kind of felt like that was a benefit of talking about it. I feel like with media, like you typically say like no comment, right? Like if you're close to something. But we'll have to see. I think they'll get something, but we'll see if it's like a as big a deal as people are making out to be. But in terms of their events, Bound for Glory is October 12th. They get off to a very hot start. So this is not necessarily like TNA's fault. It's more not WrestleTix either, but like sometimes there's like accounting that has to be done. So for the last couple of weeks, basically they kept the number the same, just under 3,000 people, because there were some sections that looked like they moved tickets, but they weren't actually on sale and so on. So this isn't necessarily dissimilar to Slammiversary. So remaining stuck on 3,000 as like this accounting, the left side and right side of the ledger have to be balanced out. We don't know yet, but and we have to see how things heat up. But we're 7 weeks away from the show, so interesting to see, because I know it's a goal of theirs to break a record. And it's Lowell. It's an hour outside Boston, I believe, an hour outside Providence. So you have one big market, one semi-major market as well. But I don't know if it's the type of place that people would travel to and so on. So I think it's just kind of see like how far you go. But obviously a great start, just has to see if it picks up. Maybe it will be again the last 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know if that's a formula that you can count on. In Minneapolis, kind of at the Armory, couple days of tapings, kind of like what you would expect from back in the day before inflated expectations. 482, 628 with a setup of a little bit over 1,000. So that is what it is. What else? So just looking back on Baltimore, I think, obviously they ran a very big venue, but there wasn't the expectation, filling it up. But in Chesapeake Employers Insurance Arena, the first night, almost 2,000. So 1912, 331 tickets via Betix. So those are comped. And the second night, 1293, 160 tickets, of course, according to WrestleTix. The event, although it seems to be staying around this number for a while too, the Victory Road related events in Edmonton seem like something to watch for me, just because they got off to a very hot start themselves. 1564 and 1420 for those 2 nights.
What is going on? What is the latest with MLW? I see David Sahadi is gone. What's going on there at MLW?
Yeah, so unfortunately, right before we taped, there was an hour YouTube video that was posted that said like the real truth of why David Sahadi left MLW. So I didn't get to listen yet. I tried to cheat and ask Rock, but it wasn't helpful in dissecting it. So maybe next week if there's something notable there to talk about. But something that is notable, like people leaving MLW always seems to be like abrupt and awkward. Like with talent, and they don't announce this as much anymore, they would like announce like multi-year deal or however they phrase it, and then like a few months later they'd be released or they'd be gone. Like, what happened? Or there's been certain executives that have passed through, or production people from David Marquez, and that was noted for like some sort of mess up, whoever was liable for that in terms of production and so on. But David Sahadi departed MLW. PW had started to confirm. We're told that the promotion has opted to move in another direction. There's also been rumbling that Sahadi, working for Real American Freestyle, was seen as a conflict of interest while also working with MLW. It's not believed Sahadi was under exclusive contract to MLW. So obviously, somebody very well respected in the field and so on. So it was, again, a surprise. MLW is keeping job openings open and added some more. So there's been a number of these that have been there a long time, or maybe they reopened and so on, but they are posting for assembly editor for their weekly series, video package editor, motion graphics designer, and graphic designer for apparel. So interestingly, last time we covered that MLW would have 2 shows in November, but that seemed to like push them past their general capacity. I don't know if it has to do with just production use or talent commitments beyond once a month, but they bumped the Lucha Apocalypto show to February. So it wasn't cited that the reason doing so was down that they have this Don Gato show in Charleston, but it seems to make sense. So MLW's return to Chicago has been rescheduled to Saturday, February 7th. All tickets previously purchased and so on. So they're scheduled now. So quietly, the Texas show, which has been on the books for a long time, on September 13th. According to the map, it looks like very few tickets remaining. So we'll have to see what that looks like in terms of footage. If it was more limited tickets on sale, but they did really well there the last time they were there. In October in Long Beach, California, tickets are moving along there. November in Charleston, looks like they've sold a number of tickets closer to the ring. And then some others are still being held back in this theater-style venue. And now we have more time with the February shows.
What is going on with the NWA? I know they've got some interesting things coming up. Is Logan Paul somehow going to be involved with the NWA?
Yeah, so this was an interesting post. NWA congratulates Logan Paul and Nina Agdal on their new marriage. Of note, Mrs. Paul is wearing a custom gown by House of Gilles or Gilles, a fashion line owned and designed by William Patrick Corgan's wife, Chloe Mandel Corgan, and her father, the legendary Achilles Mendel. So I'm familiar with that from the, what was it? It wasn't called Carneyland, right? What was it called?
Yeah, Carneyland.
Oh, it was Carneyland. Okay, the NWA show that streamed and so on. So obviously his wife was on there and his father-in-law as well. So, but like I don't think Logan Paul has any commitments, but it made me think, John, about like how can a brand like the NWA possibly break through? And obviously you have William Corgan, who has a lot of cultural resonance, at least for those of us that are older. And the financial means, a legacy brand. And I don't think like spending a lot of money on like a big name talent would even break them through. But a Logan Paul would. Obviously, WWE's using him in a top position. So, and he's deeply involved with them, with his Prime brand and all of that. But
what a
like,
connection though between NWA and Logan Paul. Look at that. It's, making a little bit of
yeah,
a connection there.
yeah, but like if they were to ever, like if Logan Paul would ever to be searching, or like maybe he wants something where he has more stake in it, like if Corgan offered him like a percentage that was meaningful to him of the NWA while he's involved, however it may be, like through his social media and so on, like he's so like of the moment that could really help them break through. But in terms of modest wins, I think PW Insider was reporting that the 77th anniversary show was sold out or nearly sold out. I don't want to misspeak there, but in terms of the information, that I have from WrestleTix, I think this was their last count. That I think this was a little bit before showtime, but 614 tickets of 745 had been distributed in the Paramount in Huntington, New York. So that's a good win for them. Next on the docket in a couple of weeks is the Tampa tapings in the PBS studios, and then back to center stage at Sam Hain on October 17th.
How about GC Dub? What's going on with GCW? Anything with WWE ID going on?
Yeah, so they got a thank you from WWE ID. Thanks, GP. I guess thanking more the producer, but name him. Thanks GPW Productions for tremendous work on the GCW Wrestling Presents ID Showcase events. Just looking at like John, especially being not too far from the region, the GCW homecoming shows, they tend to get buzz in previous years, especially when like bigger name talent was connected. Like, what was your feel? Like, were you seeing much about homecoming in Atlantic City this year compared to the past?
No, I kept looking it up because I wanted to see what the matches were and what was going on. I felt like they weren't pushing it or maybe promoting it as much as I've seen maybe like last year or even 2 years ago. It was weird. It was kind of quiet. I just see Cardona pumping up his match with Shotzi for night one, but I don't know. I was kind of surprised. Like not really a lot of promotion for night two. It seemed down for some reason as far as like seeing some advertising for it and stuff.
Yeah, and at least as we're recording this on Friday, at least as of Thursday, ticket sales reflected that as well. That there were just 4 remaining in the second row on the first night. So assuming that those will go, but fifth row and beyond, plenty of tickets available. And then in the second night, plenty of tickets available from the second row and beyond. And shows like this, if I remember correctly, it's usually you're doing pretty well if you like have sold the first 7, maybe 8 rows the first night, and then the second night would show like 5 rows deep, something like that. So certainly looks like a struggle. So that's what's most in front of us. Also, didn't see much buzz coming out of the Juggalo, gathering of the Juggalos. I thought that there would be like certain clips that would travel and so on. I wasn't getting much in my feed. Were you seeing much about the 2 nights in Thornville, Ohio, John?
No, not as much as I thought I was going to, because I was actually actively seeking it out. I had to actually look it up and find it. I would thought it would just kind of, pop up because it was a hot little thing they had got going on. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. Like cooled off a little bit for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And when I would look on X for like keywords and so on, and what would come up would be like our interviews
Yeah.
and talking
Yep.
about it and so on, or things that we had reshared and so on. So not too much there. In Detroit on September 12th, um, plenty of tickets from the second row and beyond. Then in Indianapolis on the 13th, plenty of tickets in the second row and beyond. So things are, at least looking from here, kind of cold with the shows that are right in front of us. So getting harder to stand out.
What is going on with this streaming stuff? Any latest, anything new as far as streaming is concerned?
So I think one of the things that we heard about a number of years ago was some wrestling companies sort of spending more on production for IWTV than they could potentially get back. I don't know if that's the case at all, but it just speaks to the cost of production. So Flow Sports has a novel solution, at least for themselves, and it'll be interesting to see if it would translate to the world of pro wrestling. And they'll talk about why it might be more difficult. Flow Sports has devised its own AI algorithms to automate live sports production for wrestling and grappling sports like BJJ. Of the streamers, more than 1 million total subscribers, about 10% or 100,000 pay for Flow Wrestling that leads the market for high school and college wrestling coverage. More than 22,000 events were streamed in 2024, spanning more than 2 million hours of live consumption. To better serve that audience, Flow Sports is taking what had been fixed camera angles and upgrading that with its VPZ product, which stands for Virtual Pan and Zoom. The new technology soft launched last week at the Marine Corps Junior Nationals. In the past, that's looked pretty static and doesn't really have the same interest and depth that you would experience if you're sitting there mat side. The idea with VPC and some things that we'll do in the future is really just bring that alive without having to have a camera operator. So, imagining scale like, maybe the grandparents want to watch their grandson who has a wrestling meet, and the high school has a deal with Flow Sports to cover that. So if they were to send a production team like the one that works for GCW, obviously it would be at a certain scale and push things over the edge. So it seems like what they had done in the past, if I understand correctly, is take a camera, set it up, connect it to the internet, and like leave it, sort of like that hard cam. So here with something like this, they could make it more consumable rather than a static feed. Maybe it knows like when to zoom in, when to zoom back, and so on. So this could work for pro wrestling in a degree, but it would probably have to be the type of pro wrestling that's more self-contained to the ring, right? Like the program would have to know, like, okay, this person's flipping out of the ring, but follow the action, or get in tight, or something like that, or it's not a secret anymore, but usually they don't try and film it if somebody is like blading, right? Something like that. But it just goes to show like technology and so on that things can get better. I don't know if this is like ideal for consuming pro wrestling, but at the not the lowest levels, but at a low level, wanting to stream your product at some wide base, this type of thing could make it more potentially possible for some.
Now, favorite topic, of course, here and there. What is the latest? I know you got news on an awesome Jeff Jarrett league, possibly here, or Jeff Jarrett show, and maybe even some blood sport.
Yeah, so and John, a lot of here and there this week. So here and there and everywhere. So first thing, I thought this was really interesting because we talked about like when will blood sport expand? What can they do? What's it like working with GCW? What can they do on their own and so on? So on August 14th, Josh Barnett had tweeted out, maybe to his regret, seeming like how he felt answered, but Bloodsport wants you. We are looking to hire someone in the realm of marketing, PR, brand partnership. Work from home or abroad is A-OK. If interested, drop me a DM. So, and then I think maybe a day later, not more than 2, it's like, thank you, everyone. I'm going to go through it. So everyone kind of thinks that they can do it. But just sort of interesting. And I almost, did it just because I like the product. So interesting to see if anything comes out of that. So that's basically Bloodsport. So this was kind of fun. And oh, actually, before we get there, Jersey Championship Wrestling, obviously affiliated with GCW. This is, John, in all my years, I have never seen this. I'm sure it's happened, but Jersey Championship Wrestling is not only looking for a street team, they're looking to pay the people. GCW street team, moderate people skills, smell okay, enjoy ambushing folks as they leave large events, pay gig. DM us your interest and qualifications. Philly, South Jersey area, 7 to 10 gigs in the next few weeks. I don't remember any pro wrestling companies being willing to pay people for a street team, even TNA, which we've talked about a number of times. That maybe it's a little bit of an overact, right? Like for a corporation of some scale. Do you remember any wrestling companies paying people to be street team members?
No, usually I thought it was free. Usually I thought you just did it for the love of the game.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So commendable, Jersey Championship Wrestling. Kudos to you. We don't know what the payment is, but that is a smart idea. So this is kind of a fun one. Jeff Jarrett's All-Star Super Slam at Veterans Park in Hendersonville, Tennessee, the Pig Fest, and it's sponsored by Dude Wipes. So, of course, why not? This is Jarrett's hometown. He has the connections with AEW buddies and obviously knows everyone in the wrestling business and so on. So I was like, what is Veterans Park? And then I looked it up, and it's a park. It's not like a baseball field. So it'll be, a smaller show. It's, what you would expect in independent wrestling. There's seats on various sides of the ring and so on. But so if this is a sold show or an opportunity to make some money close to his hometown, why not? Every once in a while, Jeff Jarrett will do something on his own. Obviously, we saw the baseball games, stadium games for a number of years, or wrestling events at baseball stadiums. But in addition to that, there's been some private shows. I think he's coordinated events for the Tennessee Titans some years for different events, things like that. Interestingly, before I forget, in terms of baseball games and so on, PWI had an interesting article that I just flipped through. I have to read it. Kind of looking at the involvement of pro wrestlers in the Savannah Bananas, which makes a lot of sense. Have you ever caught any Savannah Banana footage or games, John?
Never been to a game, but I've seen footage and highlights, and it always pops up on my social media feed, so I see them a lot. Interesting stuff over there for the Savannah Bananas and all those teams that they play.
Yeah, a huge success, really.
Yeah, killing it, absolutely killing it.
Breakthrough success. I haven't seen any pushback where people are like, "What have you done to my business?" I guess people know it is what it is. So the next story is somewhat unexpected. So we carried Prestige Wrestling in terms of their ambitious event in the arena for the second year in a row and had to go and tried to look into that some more and so on. But there was this feud going on in the Pacific Northwest. So Brock sums it up in this way. In recent weeks, a controversy erupted in the Pacific Northwest involving Prestige Wrestling and Portland Wrestling. Portland Wrestling announced the return of controversial wrestler Joey Ryan, who had been absent from the industry since 2020 due to allegations of sexual misconduct during the Speak Out movement. This decision sparked significant backlash. In response, Prestige Wrestling, led by promoter William Quintana, took a firm stance against Ryan's return. Quintana announced that any talent or crew working with Portland's event would be excluded from Prestige, effectively threatening to blackball them. He also scheduled a counter event called FJR on the same day, promoting it's a safe space pro wrestling action with donation-based tickets, all profit expenses to donate RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. Just a heads up, That's, due to the connection with rain, we're just going to like be mentioning, that in the abstract here. Portland Wrestling postponed their August 23rd event, citing threats of gun violence allegedly made by Quintana and claiming they lacked a ring due to cancellation caused by Prestige's actions. They accused Quintana of tortious interference, unfair competition, civil conspiracy, threatening legal action. The wrestling community on platforms like Reddit praised Prestige response, with some calling it a stand of integrity. Others debated whether Quintana's actions constitute blackballing, potentially impacting wrestlers' livelihoods. The controversy highlights ongoing tensions in the indie wrestling scene regarding accountability and handling of controversial figures. So, John, I'd love your feedback on this because, I think you've been bold in, like, when you have guests on your show, I don't think you've been afraid of giving people second chances or controversial figures and so on. And sometimes to Bix's dismay or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever
Yes.
it may
100%
be.
true.
Like, what do
Yes.
you think about this whole rigmarole?
It is interesting because I literally was thinking, I was like, man, I wouldn't mind having Joey Ryan on the show just to hear his side of things. Not saying I believe him or don't believe him. And obviously, there's been a lot of allegations made against him. But I'd love to hear the other side of the story. I know some people hate when people have certain people on. I mean, I like to have the left, the right, the center, the up, down, green, purple. I like to have everybody on, everybody as a wrestler, and try to get everybody's opinion. So when I saw this, I was kind of like fascinated. I'm like, okay, FJR, I know what that means. Obviously F Joey Ryan is the whole thing and this and that. But then on the other side of the coin, and you kind of flip it, it's made allegations that that guy is up to no good, just as far as trying to hurt another promotion and gun violence and all this other stuff. So it's one of those things where if you're on either side, everybody makes huge mistakes. Obviously, maybe even some people do illegal things and immoral things and things maybe they should go to jail for on both sides of the coin here. So to me, I mean, I'd love to interview everybody and kind of get their perspective and ask them certain things and what happened here, what happened there, and just kind of get into more of the story here. But I was just kind of always have my kind of my eye raised or my ears open when I'm like listening to these one guys that are so social justice and and then you're like, all right, so what is this guy doing behind the scenes? And then you hear something that they're doing behind the scenes, and you're just like, wow, that was eye opening. I thought you were for this. I thought you were for the right. I thought you were doing good stuff, and then you're kind of, I don't know, have these allegations come out that you might not be so good, and you might be doing some illegal stuff, and you might be doing something that possibly could go to jail for. So it is a real weird thing out there. But I'd love to get kind of everybody's perspective because there's somewhere to the left, people are right, somewhere to the right. Now, I'm not saying politically, I'm just saying it in generality. And then in the middle is somewhere is the truth. So, I mean, whether you wherever you look, somewhere out there is the truth, but there's always some good stories on both sides.
Yeah, I think if allegations are, like, they don't necessarily have to be proven in court of law to be like, for my entertainment, I will not support this person or that. What I know is enough, or what I feel I know is enough, and let the consumer decide. But I feel like in pro wrestling, probably in a number of things which I talked about before, like I feel it's sort of like, what buzz do you have? Who are you? Like, and so on. Like, I feel like maybe some people should be canceled forever, but people don't talk about it anymore. Like, allegedly, right? Like Stone Cold Steve Austin was a domestic abuser. Has he ever come out and apologized for that, or said he's turned a different leaf, or anything like that? It's just sort of gone away, and it was like Steve Austin, and no one holds it against WWE or anything like that. Allegations against Moose in a similar capacity. Does he ever get canceled anymore? He's even appeared on WWE, whatever it may be. So I don't feel like it's fairly applied. I'm fine with like companies having certain standards, like if you've been in trouble in the law, especially related to inappropriate sexual activity, inappropriate domestic issues, whatever it may be, you are canceled and we're not working with you. Whereas, like, obviously, the internet wrestling community, quote unquote, like, a million different voices and so on. Everyone has to make their decision, but I think like people shift one way or another. It's like you're horrible, and but like somebody else who does or alleged to have done horrible things, it's sort of they get the pass and they're okay. So
Yeah,
even more deeply about this was that allegedly I didn't see the screen images. So if I was doing a presentation, maybe I'd have that. I just want to refer to it that it seemed like when Quintana was like writing about it that there was like a T-shirt with a gun on it. I think that was the issue. I hope I'm representing that correctly, sort of, so they feel like they're the person from Portland was, I don't know if it was called restraining or whatever it might be, was like filing something based on that they felt that they were being threatened to get harm. And at the end of the day, it seems like something good is coming out of it in that Rain will get at least $3,000 from a sold out show that everyone is working for free, including Donhausen.
it's just, I don't know. To me, one of those crazy things. It's like this person is good, this person's bad. Let's get on rag on Hogan. Let's not say anything about Austin. Let's not say anything about Cena. How he came out and said he loves Vince, and he's not going to judge him. And like nobody gets mad at Cena for that. Then they get mad at Lesnar for allegations. Like you can't win, but it's just funny that nobody looks at both sides. Oh, Joey Ryan did this. Yeah, awful stuff that he was accused of, and all this other stuff. But no one's going to say anything that they love, that he's bringing out penises and blow pops and all the other stuff when he was wrestling. Then you guys loved him. Like, it just really, really weird stuff by some of the fan base. And he's still friends with certain guys that are from the second biggest promotion in the world that live in Southern California. So it's like, I don't know, you got like they pick and choose almost with their battles, and sometimes it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think like in pro wrestling independence, like if you are a danger in the locker room or danger to fans, and there was not related to any of the names that we mentioned today. I don't even know the person's name, like a very low level, like Georgia independent wrestler. It seemed like he is attempting to be, I'm not sure the whole story, be sexually inappropriate with a minor, that sort of thing. Obviously, that person, if there's anything, to any of those charges, something like that, they should just be like forever kept away from the business. But people that may have done inappropriate things, not necessarily saying that I want to go out and see them perform, but like, what's the standard? Because independent wrestling, it means that you're not in the mainstream because of a certain reason. Sometimes it's you want to be independent, which is fine. Sometimes it's, are you on the downside of your career or on the upside of the career? So like there should be a place for people that can't make it in some way, and then let the public decide without like people slamming them from across the country. So again, I'm not defending it, just kind of thinking through those ideas. But a lot of that. But on the positive side and looking at Beyond Wrestling, although I think Beyond sort of had somebody semi-affiliated that was controversial a few years ago. I don't remember that exact story, but interesting story from the Warwick Beacon by Rob Duguay, covering Wrestling Open RI that takes place on Rhodes on the Pawtucket every Monday night. I actually thought about it because I was in Rhode Island on Monday night. There was supposed to be a cool event on the Providence water, that like fire on the water type of thing, which didn't seem to happen, or we couldn't find it. So I didn't think about this that much, but maybe I should have while I was in town. But really in-depth article, so maybe I'll read most of it, or we'll see how it's going. So America Rana 25 celebrating 12 years since Beyond Wrestling's first edition of the event at Fett Music Hall in Providence. Wow, time flies. So what would you say is your proudest accomplishment? There's been more than 100 different, of course, this is Drew Cordiero, who's answering, the owner of Beyond. There's been more than 100 different wrestlers we've worked with over the years who've gone on to earn contracts with WWE and AEW. I would say there's probably at least 20 where you can pinpoint the trajectory of their careers changing specifically for competing at Beyond. Speaking of some of those wrestlers, you have a pretty stacked card: Shotzi Blackheart, Cardona, Statlander, Thatcher. If you had to pick the premier match, the match is going to be Bobby Orlando and Bryce Donovan. So I'm going to skip through that because that's not business. What would you say is the most stressful part? Stressful part has changed so much where on any night you can turn on television and there's wrestling. It's stressful to figure out the type of wrestling we want to provide that makes for a worthwhile experience and a value for the kinds of fans we're trying to cultivate and attract to our shows. Are we going to hit the mark or are we going to miss the target? There's always that uncertainty until the show happens. I grew up in Rhode Island. I've always wanted to bring the type of wrestling that I like back to Rhode Island. Independent wrestling in New England used to be very much focused on getting wrestlers to WWE. I always thought there's so many different styles. The thing that's been the most rewarding is that since WWE introduced WWE ID, of the 19 wrestlers that were signed, 7 of them came from Wrestling Open. I feel like our structure and our environment, we're able to pass information along to great athletes and good prospects. So for fans of major promotions who aren't familiar with independence, what would you say makes this side stand out? It's the energy. With TNA coming to Rhode Island a few weeks ago and doing an event at the Ryan Center, even if that room is scheduled for 3,000 and there's 1,000 people there, the room itself can still hold 8,000 people. When we go to a venue like Rose on the Pawtucket, even though capacity is 2,000, the space is cut to a third of that, where even our Wrestling Open RI shows are scaled between 225 and 240. You can sit as close to 6 feet away from the ring. And for America Brown event, we'll have standing on 2 sides and seating on the 2 sides, so people will literally be able to be right up against the ring. I think it's cool that we have a highly structured environment. What's next? Right now, we're scheduled for every Monday during the summer. So I'd like to get to a point where we've grown the audience enough that we can extend that relationship. I'd like to extend indefinitely, like we have in Worcester. So I would say that's definitely top priority, making sure that we're securing our future events both in Cranston and Worcester for the long term. Apologies for that. A New England promotion mispronunciation. On top of that, always exploring different partnerships with different places in Southern New England where you can take it beyond super shows. It's awesome we can do Americana, but I'm always intrigued as far as if there's more that we can be doing in Boston and other areas that fans in both Cranston and Worcester will be looking to travel to for a marriage of those 2 audiences. And finally, speaking positively of the Georgia wrestling scene, we had WALB News in Georgia talking about Kraken wrestling. From 20 fans to hundreds, Pro Kraken became a community force in small town Tifton. Wrestling has found a home in South Georgia thanks to Kraken. Promotion started with 28 and now draws crowds in more than 160, with their largest show topping 300. Owner Samuel Skaggs said the idea was to build something lasting for the Tifton community, a place where wrestling shows just pass through. It really makes me feel it makes me feel better about what we're creating here. Kraken is to provide something not only for ourselves, but for the community to continue to grow. So a nice little piece there as well.
Right, good stuff this week. Lavie covered a lot of bases here, even some WWE stuff as well. Let's hit the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie?
Follow me on X, Lavie Mark, LavieMarg. Check out my long-form articles on LionCubJobSearch.com and go to LinkedIn and search for the Business of the Business group so you can connect and stay informed about jobs in pro wrestling, our latest podcast, and network with others in the field.
All right. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. Right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.